want to. But in addition, we're apparently not allowed to do any of those things, nor are we allowed extraordinary rendition, nor can we return them to their countries of origin in case they get maltreated there by their own governments. Well, this leaves apparently only two alternatives. One is not to take any prisoners, and the other is to let everybody go and say we've got no right to hold you. And neither of these seem to be very attractive. This is as far as I've got now with my reasoning about it.
Do you not dislike the way that all of these actions may in fact be unconstitutional? They're not justified in constitutional terms, but in language such as extraordinary rendition, emergency powers.
Yeah, I do dislike that very much, yes. I mean, no one's ever been able to point out to me that Lincoln's suspension of habeas corpus helped to defeat the Confederacy, for example. And I certainly don't think that the President has the right under the Constitution to suspend habeas corpus. Only the Congress can do that. It doesn't mean it can't be suspended, but Congress has to do it, the President cannot. I'm rather a stickler for that kind of thing. Call me old-fashioned, if you will.
Well, I think I've taken up a little too much time now. Although
very welcome question, believe me.
I would posit that the Bush administration has restrained itself, or needed to be restrained, from using genuine religious language in the way it's approached its so-called war on terror. And I believe the word crusade was used early on in the campaign by President Bush. It's not been used since. And we remember that the original name of the campaign was Infinite Justice, another rejected piece of unfortunate language, obviously picked out by some careful PR person.
Fair enough.
Hi, thank you very much for coming. I was just had a question about something that many people will probably find to be a less serious issue, but I'm curious about your thoughts on art, music, and creativity, and how those fit in with your other ideas. Those are three things that form communities that maybe could be argued of faith. You know, the greatest composers throughout history always dedicating their work to God and things of that nature. And I'm just curious how you view these things and the beauty of these things to be similar to the beauty that you've suggested you can find in nature, or how you think that they might be more suited, more fitting in with religion. I'm just curious if you think that they need to be devalued in this new system or with your ideas.
Yeah, we don't know of the extraordinary buildings, the great Gothic cathedrals, for example, or even the great mosques of Andalusia. We don't know of the architects who built them, that they were themselves convinced that it was for the greater glory of God. We just know that at the time you couldn't get a job as an architect if you didn't affirm that. And that certainly we know what would have happened to you if you said, "What God?" That would not just mean the end of your career as an architect. So we don't know that about that. We don't know the same about even the devotional painters. We don't know that they were believers, or the composers. Of the devotional poets, and I'm on stronger ground here as a literary critic, and I know a bit more about it, people like John Donne or George Herbert, I think it would be very, very hard to fake writing that if you weren't a believer. It would be extremely hard. Where would you get your inspiration from? My feeling is that is real devotional poetry, and I personally couldn't be without it. We'd be much poorer. To stay with literature, if you don't mind, the King James version of the Bible, the King James translation, referred to in the New York Times recently as the St. James translation, is itself a great work of literature, and one couldn't be without it. If you don't understand the beauty of that liturgy, there's a lot of Shakespeare and of Milton and Blake you wouldn't get. You wouldn't know what was going on. So it's part of literacy to know it. I once wrote a book about the Parthenon, a very important building for Western civilization. Great deal to be learned from it, and by its beauty and by its symmetry and by its extraordinary architecture and sculpture. But I no longer care about the cult of Pallas Athena. I no longer care about the mystical ceremonies, some of them involving animal sacrifice and possibly human, that were conducted on the road from Eleusis. And I don't have to care about Athenian imperialism and what it did to the Greek colonies in the rest of the Mediterranean. I can just appreciate the building and know about the philosophical context and the plays of Sophocles and all the other things that were going on at the same time, without any reference to their gods. So I propose that what culture largely means to us now is how to deal with civilizational art and great creativity in a post-supernatural era. In other words, how to keep all of that that's of value without having to care about the cult of Pallas Athena, for example, or being forced to bear in mind that, say, St. Peter's in Rome, actually not, I think, that impressive a building, was built by a special sale of indulgences. I mean, that's how the money for it was raised. We can consider that independently now. We can value it as a building without knowing that, though I always find it slightly hard to forget.
Right. Okay. I was just curious. I mean, I wanted to speak more towards how all these things in art and music and creativity are often relayed between individuals as being spiritual,
yes,
or something along that nature, whether or not the actual topic.
Well, then because it's a good opportunity to do so. Yeah. And I wanted to say a bit more of this when I was speaking first. I think that the human need for the transcendent or the spiritual is undeniable, but that's not the supernatural. It's very important to understand. The feeling that people get out of landscape and music, or landscape and music in combination, or the feeling of war and love at the same time has had extraordinary consequences for many people, say, or one or other on their own. These are the things we can't do without, but there's no reason to attribute them to the supernatural.
Yes,
you're not glimpsing anything but nature from that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. So it turns out if you follow the money trail back for a lot of these things, this whole creationism, teaching creationism idea, you'll eventually find political organizations that are trying to energize a base, right? And these bases,
yes,
what they'd like to do is to get these people to feel like they're being attacked. And in a lot of the discussions we have and in your presentation, there's a fine line between attacking people versus attacking ideas, right? What do you do to kind of ensure that you're not going after people and not making people feel like you're telling them that they're idiots, for example, right? How do you make that separation?
Well, I think my answer's been anticipated, perhaps.
Right.
If someone tells me that I've hurt their feelings, I say, well, I'm still waiting to hear what your point is.
Right.
I'm very depressed how in this country you can be told, that's offensive, as if those two words constitute an argument or a comment. Not to me, they don't. And I'm not running for anything, so I don't have to pretend to like people when I don't.
Right. Thanks.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much for speaking. I think we're going to have a book signing right outside over here. So if everyone got their copy of the book. But thank you very much for coming.
How very nice of you to do that.